we begin UpadesaSahasri, a text of Shankara. Now, a little bit of a caveat here. Scholars have a difficult time even dating when Shankara lived. Most scholars date him from 788 to 820. So he didn't live very long. And he wrote voluminously. He is best known for his bhashya or commentaries on the Brahma Sutras, the principal Upanishads. I think there are 11 of them. We only call them principal because he commented on them, and his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote a whole series of work called Prakarana Granthi, which are, I call them workbooks. And then the vast majority of his writing, believe it or not, is devotional hymns. So many stotrams. Bhaji Govindam, Nirvana Shatakam, Brahma Jnana Vali, so many of them, so many of them. It's obviously more writing than any one person could do in a short 32 years. Even if he started at the age of 8, which some people think he did. So many scholars think that through the years, work has been attributed to him. Could have been by his immediate disciples or later. So we don't know really who wrote what. Most scholars focus, they say the bhashya. That for sure we know is Shankara. Rest, we don't know about. So whether this is authentic Shankara or not, I don't know. So why don't we start with the foreword or the preface material? I think it's quite short. This particular edition, if I recall, is a translation by a Ramakrishna order Swami, Jagadananda. And I think it's from 1941. So it's mid 20th century. Will you help us out, please?
Sure. Preface. UpadesaSahasri, written by Sri Shankara, the great teacher, is translated into English with explanatory footnotes, which will be found useful by readers while going through the book. References to Upanishads, the Vedanta aphorisms, and the Bhagavad Gita, mostly quoted by the author, have been carefully traced and shown at the bottom of the pages, which, it is presumed, will throw much clear light on the text and solve difficulties. In his eagerness to do good to people, the great author, while writing the book, has spared no pains in making clear the idea of the distinction between oneself and one's body, mind, etc., which, when rightly comprehended under the benevolent guidance of a teacher, a man of knowledge, will perfectly convince one that one is not other than the unlimited bliss, untouched by hunger and thirst, grief and delusion, old age and death, the only real existence, the goal of all human beings to be realized in life. Ramatirtha's glossary on Shankara's UpadesaSahasri has been followed in translating the book and appending footnotes. Certain words not to be found in the text, but necessary for making the meaning clear, have been placed within brackets. Explanatory paragraphs have been added to the translation in a few places. In studying the book, one may begin either the prose part or the metrical. We have adopted the most acceptable readings after consulting Nirnay Sagar, Lotus Library, and Mysore editions of the book. An index to the verses appended at the end of the book will, it is hoped, be found useful.
All right, let's begin.
UpadesaSahasri, 1,000 teachings. Gaddhabandha Prathamo Bhag, first part in prose. Shishya Pratibodha Vidhi Prakaranam, a method of enlightening the disciple. Atha Moksha Sadhanopadesha Vidhim Vyakhyasyamu Mumukshunam Shraddhana Namarthinam Namarthaya. We shall now explain a method of teaching the means to liberation for the benefit of those aspirants after liberation who are desirous of this teaching and are possessed of faith in it.
So he starts off with the intention of the text. The intention of the text is to explain how to be free. Moksha means freedom. And Shankara always stresses, freedom is not something that happens after death. It's not like the Christian or the Muslim heaven, where if you're good in this life, you go to heaven. Vedanta thunders the Jivan Mukta, be liberated while here. And then he puts forward what I consider the great impediment to liberation. I will frequently say self-realization is not difficult, but it's very rare. And it's very rare because nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. And the way I like to approach it, if you take the word God, G-O-D, and you push apart the word a bit, you take an extra O and you go, and you put it in, then you have G-O-O-D, good. You may think you worship Shiva or Krishna or Devi, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha. The truth is, your good is your God. That's where your heart is. And that's where you think your happiness is. So you may go to the temple or the mosque or the church, but if making money is your good, that's your God. If you think the approval of other people is your good, that's your God. If you think being in control is your good, that's your God. And as it says in the Hebrew scripture, I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Doesn't mean God's neurotic. It means if you want God, we have to set aside other priorities. So here, Shankara says, this is a text for someone who's a mumukshu, who's desirous for liberation, and who has shraddha, who has faith. Now, shraddha in Sanskrit is a richer word than shraddha in English. We have, oh, I believe in God, that's my faith. I'm a Unitarian, that's my faith. But we also have worldly faith. You have faith that when you get in the car, turn on the ignition, it's going to start up. We have faith that if I log on to the Zoom machine, it's going to work. I don't have a lot of faith in that. But when it comes to Shraddha, Shankara will also say it is by this means alone that the truth is revealed. The additional element of Shraddha is the capacity of the student to surrender and go where the teacher's mind goes. It's the way we understand poetry. It's the way we can enter into a piece of music. I was watching a YouTube video this morning of the procession of the casket of Queen Elizabeth from Buckingham Palace to Whitehall. Is that right, Whitehall? Wherever it was she went. And they were playing a funeral march in a marching band. First time I've ever heard a funeral march actually played at a funeral. Oh, it was so sad in a minor key and solemn. What is it that makes us feel sad and solemn when we hear this music? That's our Shraddha. So what does the teacher do? The teacher says, you come see how I see. It is like if I were to say, have you ever been up to Muir Woods or any other redwood grove? Go inside the grove, all of a sudden the temperature drops about 10 degrees. There are no insects. Because there's no insects, there's no birds. So it's incredibly quiet. It feels so sacred. You ever felt that in a redwood grove?
Yes.
Yes. How did you go where my mind went? I described an experience, and you were right there right along with me, weren't you?
Yes.
That's your Shraddha. That's your Shraddha. So it's a richer word than just faith, than just faith. Any other questions about this? All right, next verse. Please, yes.
I have a question on this. I get your example about the redwood forest, but for example, during meditations, if for example, my mind is really active some days, how do I follow where you go? Are there sort of like baby steps one someone can take, or what advice do you have for that?
Okay, so your faith can be increased by a series of practices, which is selfless service, karma yoga, practicing. I don't know if we'll get to it in this text, but in other Shankara texts, we have the Shama Adi Guna, qualities of Shama, etc., where I practice Shama, Dhamma, Upadati, Titiksha, Samadhana, all of these various practices. Or you can go to Raja Yoga. Your yamas and niyamas are ways to help quieten the mind. So a sattvic mind can go where the teacher's mind goes. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing practice. Just keep doing practice. So that's Fang in from New York.
That's right, Jim. Hi, how are you?
Hariom. Hariom.
Thank you.
All right. Next verse.
Tadidam moksha sadhanam jnanam sadhana sadhya dan दनित्यात् सर्वस्वमा द्विरक्त्याय त्यक्तपुत्रवित्तलोकैषणाय प्रतिपन्न परमहंस पारिव्राजयाय शमदमदया दियुक्ताय शास्त्र प्रसिद्ध शिष्य गुण संपन्नाय शुचये ब्राह्मणाय विधि वधूपसनाय शिष्याय जाति कर्म वृत्ति विद्याभिजनेह परीक्षिताय ब्रूयात् पुनः पुनः यावद् दृष्टि भवति.
It's a mouthful.
The paragraph's also a mouthful.
Yeah.
That means to liberation via knowledge should be explained again and again until it is firmly grasped to a pure Brahmana disciple who is indifferent to everything that is transitory and achievable through certain means, who has given up the desire for a son, for wealth, for this world and the next, who has adopted the life of a wandering monk and is endowed with control over the mind and senses, with compassion, etc., as well as the qualities of a disciple well known in the scriptures, and who has approached the teacher in the prescribed manner and been examined in respect of his caste, profession, conduct, learning, and parentage.
So there are some cultural contexts here. Shankara, like any other human being, cannot help but be influenced by his cultural context. So we know better now. So as we go through this, we can set some of these things aside and look for a deeper meaning than the surface interpretation. So let's go through them thought by thought. First one, first idea.
That means to liberation should be explained again and again until it is firmly grasped to a pure Brahmana disciple.
Okay, that's far enough. So one of the things that happens is our ignorance is a deeply rooted samskara, a deeply rooted impression in the mind. Frankly, there is no other ignorance than the deeply rooted conviction that I'm bound and that I'm my body. I'm a person. Many of you may have experienced this, or I know like Aditi's a mental health professional. You can look at something like, say, childhood abuse or PTSD. So what happens? You're a grown-up adult, and an event will happen where you're not threatened. Somehow that event threatens us, and it triggers the thought flow and the emotional atmosphere of the original trauma. Have I explained that well? Yes?
Yeah.
It's not real. You're a grown-up woman or a grown-up man. You're not in any danger. But the impression in the mind is so strong, you almost can't help it. You almost can't help it. That's nothing compared to the force of our spiritual ignorance. It's powerful. So what does a person do, for example, if they have childhood trauma? First of all, they have to become aware of it. You're not reacting to your boss, you're reacting to an early childhood event. Okay, that's just what we would call paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge. But then you've got to learn, know, over and over and over again. This is just a trigger. I'm fine. I can let it go. No. So here Shankara is saying it takes repetition. How did that negative programming get in there in the first place? Through repetition. Here's an interesting example of it in a worldly way. In many traditional Jewish families, you never compliment your kids because it attracts the evil eye. So many kids are raised with low self-esteem, always trying to be perfect, always trying to be perfect. Because they got the message as kids, and came home with straight A's. Well, why didn't you get A pluses? You may have gotten straight A's, but your face is dirty. Go wash your face. You're never enough. It's not true, but these are deeply rooted and ingrained beliefs. How do we get out? Repetition. Over and over and over again. So we go off into the triggering thoughts. I'm a person. I'm my body. Teacher. Over and over again. Explains to a person, no. Think logically. Logically, what's really going on? No, you can't be that feeling because you know that feeling. Over and over. Now, here Shankara says for Brahmanas. Fang, you and I are out of luck. It's not true. Understanding the deeper meaning of Varna, caste. Now, the word Varna actually means color. Actually, the English word caste or hue also means color. So it has a racial overtone. But in Gita, Krishna is very clear. He says, I am the author of the fourfold caste according to guna and karma. Note, he does not say janma. Janma means birth. Jati is birth. What's your jati? Oh, my family are leather workers, or our family are Brahmin cooks, or something like that. That's your jati. But your varna, which are the four castes, is according to the qualities of your mind, the actions you perform. What are these four? The Brahmanas are the holders of the sacred wisdom. They're the cultural walking libraries. And the qualities of their mind and the work they do is to be engaged in the preservation of, and understanding of the scriptural lore. They're the philosopher class. The Kshatriyas, they are the preservers of righteousness and justice in the culture. It's their job to ensure that government and leaders are just. And if they're not just, you fight for justice. That's what Kshatriya does. You will frequently be part of the military. They frequently are judges or attorneys, political activists. Vaishyas, the merchant class. These are those people who are in charge of the production and the distribution of goods and services. Shudra, they are the laborers, the people who work with their hands, the craftsmen of an age. No one of the castes is better than another. We can look at the human body. You have a head, you have hands, you've got genitalia, you got feet, etc. I don't like my anus, therefore I'm not going to ever poop again. Even the most private parts are essential. Probably a lot more essential than your brain in some ways. So there is no better or worse when it comes to the castes. Now listen carefully. In the modern times, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, there has been a confusion of Varna with Jati. So I'm a Brahmin because my parents were. We belong to a particular, better, more noble caste by birth. Swamiji would say it doesn't matter what your family is or whether you wear the sacred thread. If you're caught up in buying and selling and acquiring wealth, you're nothing but a merchant. Likewise, your parents may have been sweepers, but if you are drawn to moksha, you're a Brahmin. Guna and karma, by the quality of your mind and your actions. Very important point. So it doesn't matter what your birth is, whether you were born in India, or born in the West, or born Chinese, or born Russian. It doesn't matter. The halls of Vedanta are open to anyone who has deep spiritual inclinations. Any thoughts on this? Now, how did all this jati business get started? Well, even in the modern era, we find that children will frequently be drawn to the professions of their parents. Tiger Woods' son loves to golf. Do you like golfing, Aditi?
No.
Were your parents golfers?
No.
Frequently, kids who grow up to be expert professional musicians will be born in musical homes where they have parents who are musicians. Not always. Not always. So also in spiritual culture. If a child is raised in a family where there are spiritual sanskaras embedded at an early age, this can influence and affect a child. Sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes a child says, this is all stupid and superstition. I'm going to go become a computer programmer. It's all the time. Any thoughts or questions about this? Next verse. Oh, no. Next idea. Excuse me. We're going through this whole paragraph.
So now describing the disciple, it says, he is indifferent to everything that is transitory and achievable through certain means, who has given up the desire for a son, for wealth, and for this world and the next.
So the precondition to success in the spiritual life is what we call vairagya. That desire to give up attachment to all enjoyments gained through the senses. Here meaning money, property, family, having children, all that stuff. Give it up. Who's indifferent to it? Like I say, it's not hard. Most people don't want it bad enough. Why is this point important? Shankara will use a very famous image, the snake in the rope. Person does not see the snake on the ground and imagines a rope and therefore gets frightened. As long as you're smooching that snake, you're never going to see the rope. As long as you think the snake is real, you're getting pleasure from it. Cannot apprehend the rope. So how do we do this? It takes some time for us to have a clear idea of what the world can give and what it can't. Most of us play whack-a-mole with the world. I'm unhappy, and as people, places, things, and conditions, and I just need to beat them into submission. We start by flowers. Oh, give me what I want. Give me what I want. When that doesn't work, we get out the baseball bat. Whack, whack, whack. Give me what I want. That doesn't work. Well, we try the flowers again. Give me what I want. Give me what I want. It's all about self-centered manipulation of everything. That's what Yoga says, how's that working out for you? And if you're woke, well, worked out very well. So this supreme indifference to the world. Now, we get the contrary message from the society. Everything, especially in America, says one with the most toys wins. You get automobile commercials on the television. Oh, get inside your Lincoln and everything will be fine. This is where real peace is. Lean back in the leather seat and put on the 6-speaker stereo and then go very fast. Inside. Get a Lincoln. Isn't that what we see? Or a dress, or a perfume, or gaining weight, or losing weight, or Botox to get rid of wrinkles. Oh, I looked in the mirror and it was hideous. And I got Botox. Now I look great and I have big muscles. How's that working out? Next idea.
Who has adopted the life of a wandering monk and is endowed with control over the mind and senses, with compassion, etc.
So, do you need to take on the life of a sannyasi, a wandering monk, a bhikshu, a beggar? Yes and no. We have many, many stories of householders who attain self-realization. In fact, all of the rishis, the ones who wrote the Upanishads and the Vedas, were all householders. Shankara's adoption of monasticism probably was influenced by Buddhist practice of the time. In the Theravada Buddhist tradition, monasticism was considered a prerequisite to enlightenment. In the Mahayana tradition, that was broadened. But inside, even the worldly person who has a family and a job, inside, you must be a sannyasi. There's a marvelous story about Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he was getting very deep into the self. And he was probably reflecting on scripture passages like this. So he left his family and his beedi shop, he had a little cigarette shop, lived above it, and decided he was going to go up to the Himalayas. And on his way up there, he had the insight. None of it really matters. Whether I'm in Mumbai or in Rishikesh. They're more Brahmin than Rishikesh. Came back. Continued doing his duty at the level of what we call vyavahara, transaction. But inside, sannyasoham, sannyasoham, Sannyasoham. And then here he indicates essentially the qualifications of a fit student. So let's quickly review them as they occur in Vivekachudamani. First one, Viveka. That firm conviction in the intellect that Brahman alone is real and that the phenomenal world is mithya, illusory, unreal, is termed discrimination between the real and the unreal. Vairagya, that desire to give up all attachments to enjoyments gained through senses and all form of self, from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, is termed Vairagya. Shamadhi guna, qualities of Shama, etc. Shama, that peaceful state of mind when it detaches itself from the sense objects again and again. Muhur muhu. Dhamma, not letting ideas from the past force our energy out of the world. Upadati, sense withdrawal. In meditation, being able to withdraw my senses from the world so that sounds and smells, etc., don't rip me off. But he says the best upadati, when you can function in the world and the perception of sense objects don't create vritti, agitation. Pratiksha, forbearance, the ability to endure the pinpricks of life without the need for redress or revenge. Let go, let go. Shraddha, faith, we talked about that. Samadhana, tranquility when the mind rests in steady contemplation of the goal of the sun. It is not to be achieved by any amount of oscillation of the mind. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Still. Mumukshutva, a burning desire for liberation. So when he says qualities like compassion, etc., he's referring to these. Next idea.
As well as the qualities of a disciple well known in the scriptures, and who has approached the teacher in the prescribed manner, and been examined in respect of his caste, profession, conduct, learning, and parentage.
So continuing this idea of being qualified. Now, we approach the teacher not with superstitious reverence. You don't crawl into the presence of the teacher with your nose on the ground. It's not what it means. Of course, we approach the teacher with respect. With open. Hasn't happened in a long time, but every once in a while, someone will come to class and what they want to do is hijack my satsang. And they're here to let everybody know what they know. Hey, go get your own satsang. If a vessel is full, you can't put anything in it. So the student, the proper attitude is to be as empty as you can be, as open, as teachable. But don't believe anything the teacher says. Be a spiritual scientist. Teacher will put forward hypotheses. So what do we do in the scientific method? We're given a hypothesis. And then we search and research. We investigate. We perform experiments implied by the hypothesis, perhaps suggested by the teacher, to prove or disprove what the teacher in the scripture has said. Swamiji used to say, blind faith is stupid faith, and it will fail us in a crisis. In Vivekachudamani, Shankara says, the guru, the fit teacher, is an intimate friend to those who have surrendered to it. Swamiji wanted us to meet him eye to eye, not groveling. As he got older, he couldn't stop people from doing it. He quit fighting the flow of the river so much. Not a whole lot happens. What is the real surrender? The real surrender is opening our hearts and minds to the teacher. Tell me what I need to know. Now, in the old-timey days, teachers would test the student. There's that famous section where Nachiketas is outside the palace of Yamaraj for 3 days. Yama was out of station, but it's a test to see, does he really want to talk to him? Stories about how Swami Tapovan gave tests to Chinmaya. See how sincere he was. We do not need to lock the doors to keep unfit students out. The Vedanta itself sets up its own guardians. People who are not ready can't stay. They don't stay. Those who are ready, they come back. Is there more to the paragraph?
That's it.
Any thoughts or questions? It's very, very rich section. Now, many of us will read a paragraph like this and go, oh God, why should I bother? This is too hard. Yes. Thank God for God's grace. There's that old slogan, do you know how you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So if we feel we don't have these qualifications, it's okay. Start. If you don't start, you'll never be on the path. So begin. Begin cultivating these qualities. Any thoughts from the Zoomies on any of this? Next verse.
Shaktischa parikshaya lokan tattvato brahmavidyam iti. Drirgrihita hi vidya atmanaha shreyase santaye cha bhavati. Vidya santatiksha pranya mukrahya bhavati nauriva nadim tatiksho. Shastram cha yadyapyasma imam midam parigrahitam dhanya purnam dadyat etadeva tato bhuya iti. Anyatha cha jnana praptya bhavat acharyavan purusho veda acharyadeva vidya vidita acharyaha plavayita samyagyanam plav ihotyache ityadi shrutibhyah upadekshanti te jnanam ityadi smritesha. The Shruti also says, a Brahmana, after examining those worlds which are the result of Vedic actions, should be indifferent to them, seeing that nothing eternal can be achieved by means of those actions. Then, with fuel in his hands, he should approach only a teacher versed in the Vedas and established in Brahman, in order to know the eternal. The learned teacher should correctly explain to that disciple who has self-control and a tranquil mind, and has approached him in the prescribed manner, the knowledge of Brahman, revealing the imperishable and eternal being. For only when knowledge is firmly grasped, it conduces to one's own good and is capable of transmission. This transmission of knowledge is helpful to people, like a boat to one who wants to cross a river. The scriptures too say, although one may give to the teacher this world surrounded by oceans and full of riches, this knowledge is even greater than that. Otherwise, there would be no attainment of knowledge. For the Shrutis say, a man having a teacher can know Brahman. Knowledge received from a teacher alone becomes perfect. The teacher is the pilot. Right knowledge is called in this world a raft, etc. The Smriti also says, knowledge will be imparted to you, etc.
Very rich verse. So let's again peel it apart. So the first idea,
The Shruti also says, a Brahmana, after examining those worlds which are the result of Vedic actions, should be indifferent to them, seeing that nothing eternal can be achieved by means of those actions.
so one of Shankara's major points in all of his writings, liberation is not the result of action, because the problem is ignorance. Let's see if I can give you an example. I'm thinking of an arithmetic problem. How many jumping jacks do you have to do in order to understand, to know what the arithmetic problem is? How many incantations of a mantra do you need to do in order to know what the arithmetic problem is? How many times around the lake do you need to jog in order to know what the arithmetic problem is? Why? Because action will not give you the answer. Ask me what arithmetic problem I'm thinking.
Which arithmetic problem?
5 plus 2 is 7. See the distinction? What she did was inquire to get knowledge. So, in the Vedas, there's a Karmakanda and a Jnana Kanda. Karmakanda, all sorts of ways to find a good husband or a good wife, how to have boy babies or girl babies, how to get wealth, rituals to do to gain merit for the next life, all this stuff. Actions produce various kinds of artha, wealth. But wealth is always temporary. See if I give you an example. So Aditi, you currently have what, a part-time job working at the yoga studio? How often do you get paid?
Every 2 weeks.
And when was your last payday?
On the 16th. On the 16th.
Was the last one?
Or sorry, on the
was the
1st.
first, yeah.
September.
What happened to the money?
It went into my account.
And then what?
And then it got spent.
What'd you say?
It got spent.
Oh! It got spent. That's the inevitable result of artha. There it is. There it is. All of it. So if we want something eternal, something permanent, it cannot be achieved through work, through action. Now, there are proper uses of self-effort. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But work alone brings happiness. So those people who think that it's about cash and prizes, moonlight. Moonlight. But in the end, this country, we tend to call it a midlife crisis. You hit 40, 45, and you think, God, I've been on the rat race now for 20 years. It's not doing it. Maybe a red sports car and a trophy wife will fix it. So it's for people who have clearly seen what worldly pursuits can do, and most importantly, what they can't do. Next idea.
Then, with fuel in his hands, he should approach only a teacher versed in the Vedas and established in Brahman in order to know the eternal.
So the tradition was to bring some sort of an offering to the teacher. It can be fuel for the fire. It can be prasad, or not prasad, but an offering, bringing fruit or food or something like that. The tradition is you don't go to the guru empty-handed. That again is a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing, no big deal. Now Shankara is beginning to move into, what do you want to look for in a teacher? So the first thing here is Shrotriyam, well versed in the Vedas. Doesn't mean that he can chant Triambakam Yajamahe, that kind of business. Doesn't mean that. The teacher needs to be able to wield a valid means of knowledge. This is a secret. There are enlightened people who do not have the means to enlighten others. They had spontaneous samadhi, deep enlightenment. There are enlightened beings who decide they want to try making up their own yoga. I remember people saying that J. Krishnamurti would be speaking from the lectern and say, can't you see, can't you see? And the people, they all, no. Man of the highest wisdom. Now, the Vedanta is not the only valid means of knowledge. It is a very powerful one. But there are many great mystic traditions. These great traditions have stuck around because they work. So a teacher needs to be able to wield a valid means of knowledge. One of the things about Swamiji, he was a great teacher of teachers. The number of men and women of knowledge just fell off of him like dewdrops from a tree after a rain. Because he was so skillful at wielding a valid means of knowledge. Now, that doesn't mean, oh, that's simple, I'll just go to the local university and listen to a pundit, listen to a professor. No. The teacher must not only be someone with a valid means of knowledge, but she also needs herself to be established in that knowledge. For example, Aditi, if an alien came down and said, I was looking at Hindu books and I was seeing all these people with 4 arms. Do human beings have 4 arms? What would you say?
No, they don't.
How do you know that?
Because I'm human.
And
That's my experience.
you don't have 4 arms?
No.
Oh. So she can speak from her own direct experience. So the woman of knowledge has become an Upanishad. She's never confused about who she is. Next idea.
The learned teacher should correctly explain to that disciple who has self-control and a tranquil mind and has approached him in the prescribed manner, the knowledge of Brahman, revealing the imperishable and eternal being.
So when the student is ready and is a adhikari, a fit student, then this wonderful dance, the Guru Shishya Parampara, takes place. So this is what we call a Shabda Pramana. It's a means of knowledge, Pramana, through the words, Shabda. So what do? Through the Vedanta, through the presence of the Guru, we endeavor to put you into a state where you're having the direct experience yourself. And then we tell you what you're experiencing when you're experiencing it. In Gita, Krishna calls this Jnanam Vijnanam Cha, understanding and direct experience. Other scriptures will use the term Paroksha Jnanam and Aparoksha Jnanam. Two come together. Then the student has the aha. Oh. I am Brahman. Never was a person. Is that all the rest of this verse?
No, there's more.
Okay, we gotta give me a couple minutes, Sumis.
For only when knowledge is firmly grasped, it conduces to one's own good and is capable of transmission. This transmission of knowledge is helpful to people, like a boat to one who wants to cross a river. And then it quotes a bunch of scriptures that say the same thing.
Yes. So the point here is the scriptural knowledge, the pramana, is like a boat. You don't take the boat across the river and then drag the boat through the rest of the country. You leave the boat behind. So in this dance between the teacher and the student, in this awakening, this is this transmission of the knowledge, a valid means of knowledge, a person of direct experience, transmitting it to another. In the Christian tradition, at the great vigil of Easter, there's a wonderful ritual. So bring in the Easter candle. Light of Christ, thanks be to God, and to the acolytes, light their candles from the Easter candle. They go, and each one of them lights others, and then more and more and more. Soon the whole church is filled with light. The cool thing is when I take my light and you get your candle lighted from mine, it takes nothing from my candle. So when the woman of wisdom transmits this to another, she loses nothing. But then there's the opportunity for that light to continue to spread. This is what will bring in the golden age, the Sadhu. Okay, we will quit here and pick up next week. How many verses did we do? 3?
3.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you.